Good morning. My name is Jenna Hill, and I'm a third grade teacher at Clara Barton Elementary, and I had the privilege of handling the 50th anniversary at Gauer Elementary School when I taught there in 2007, and I had the wonderful privilege of meeting Mel Gauer's daughters, Kathryn Kopitzke and Charlotte, her sister Charlotte, and we are here to just to find out a little bit more about the life of Mel Gauer and about your life within your family and just what legacy he left in Anaheim Elementary School District, which was formerly Anaheim City School District. So I'd like you to introduce yourself if you could and tell us your full name, Kathryn.
Oh, I'm Kathryn Louise Gauer Kopitzke, and
Okay, and what year were you born?
I was born in 1926,
Okay.
November 25th, on Thanksgiving morning.
Oh, wow, so your birthday's coming up.
Yes,
And where were you born?
in Anaheim, at home,
At home.
at 212 North Helena Street.
Okay. What are the names and birth order of your siblings?
I'm not sure.
What are the names and the birth orders of your siblings? Like, can you talk a
Oh,
little bit about your siblings?
Margaret, Olive Gower, and Blee. She was married to David Blee in she was like 27 or 28. She's 7 years older. Between me and my older sister, there was a boy that lived for 2 years, died, John, and then Melbourne came, and he was my big brother. He was 2 years older than me. And then behind me came Charlotte, was a year and a half younger. And Sonny, we called Sonny, he was Melbourne Jr., and he was my big brother till at 4.5. He had, they thought was infantile paralysis. So they put him in bed and tried to create a very hot atmosphere to burn the infantile paralysis out of him. Only it turned out he had meningitis, which made him brain dead. But Sonny was my big brother. I always call him my big brother. Charlotte doesn't remember him at all, but I do. He was the one that put me on the back of his tricycle. He led me around town. When Charlotte was a baby, mother was busy with her, but he took care of me. So that's my vision of my brother.
Nice.
And then John, who was behind Margaret, died too from strep throat. And Melbourne then at 4 lived to be 14, 15, but he was mentally damaged because of the high temperature treatment he had.
Okay.
So that's but I remember about the family.
Okay.
Charlotte and I were very close because she's just, just barely a year between us.
Right. Close in age. What are your earliest recollections of your father?
Oh, my father was always loved to be the center of the stage. He always liked to have everybody sing. You always had to start any meeting or any greeting with that kind of attitude. So he loved music, and he loved people, and he was very generous with his time with people.
You were mentioning that he played a couple of instruments.
He played banjo,
The mandolin.
and I think at one time he'd also played clarinet, but he ended up with the banjo type thing. And he'd sang all the time.
In the interview that we read about your father, he talked about family times on Sunday. Like all of the family would get together.
Oh,
yeah, that
everybody?
was like sacred time on
Yeah.
weekends because he had.
Everybody got ready for Sunday. You always polish your shoes. You're always ready the next day to go to church, and we always went to church every Sunday. We went to Sunday school. He taught Sunday school for the adults. He was a Methodist. He'd been brought up as a Catholic, but he didn't like the Catholic Church, and in Kansas, and his father was kind of a very hard father to be around. 'Cause I guess remember him talking about being disciplined with the belt type discipline that they did with boys in those days. So he was glad to be part of the Protestant church, Methodist church.
Okay, and then what brought him out to Ontario, California from Kansas?
He came to California. His parents moved in probably 1911 or 12 from Kansas, Sterling, Kansas. His father had been head of the waterworks, and then they came to California because of the weather. So they came to Long Beach, and so he was in the teen years. That sent him to UCLA, which was at that time was the campus in Los Angeles, which became UCLA eventually.
Was it the Los Angeles Normal College? I think it was.
Yeah, it was in the before the war.
Okay.
And then during World War I, he was worked in a factory, and that's where he met Margaret, who became Margaret Fleur of the Fleur Corporation. And the Fleurs were from in Anaheim, very strong Catholic family. So Margaret married Pete Fleur somewhere along the line. So when Dad was teaching in Ontario, and the superintendency open came in Anaheim, I think it was through the Fleur family. The Catholic family knew Dad would work with the Catholic Church because they were against having their children go to public school. They wanted to be kept the Catholic school. So he worked very hard to work with the Catholic. I remember talking about this, working with the Catholic Church and the schools to coordinate the education. So then the girls went to Catholic high school, and the boys either went to the military academy or they went to high school. Most of them went to high school with me. So there's separation of the churches there. But he worked very, very closely with the different churches to keep everything with the schools and their private, because there's other people had private school teaching too. But he was just a very genuine person to be able to sort of compromise with the community.
He also was very involved with, he also played football in college, is that correct? He was very athletic in college?
Yes, and I think I mentioned to you, it's amazing that when I found out that my father had only the sight of one eye, he put out his own eye at age 9, the left eye, and but he played football, baseball. I never knew he only had one eye. So he must have been just a tremendous, how could you manage the depth perception that he managed to do? So he was amazing physically, because it was never told to me until later when I remember driving. I found out, and it was about the time I started to learn how to drive, and Dad talked about, watching before you turn, it look both ways like this, and then I realized that he didn't have I didn't know that he'd put his own eye out with him, because the eyeball was there. You could see the scales, the slit, but I didn't realize he'd actually lost his sight. He never talked about it.
He talked a little bit about depth perception.
Yeah, depth perception.
And one thing that you mentioned at the 50th that was interesting when I found out how active he was is you talked about the schools in Anaheim when he served as superintendent there, how each school had a park with a baseball field behind it or adjacent to it.
Yeah.
And that was his doing. Can you
Yes,
talk a little bit about that?
every school had the same equipment, and it was all built so that every child could have a chance to do whatever, be trained in every area. Physical education was important.
Okay, and
We learned to march. We had our field day. at the end of the year, where every school put on a march across the field, and they were presented to in May at the Anaheim Park, and then the boys would play. I forgot what they did particularly, but the girls all did the maypole, and then the boys did some gymnastics and that sort of thing to show off their prowess gymnastically, physically.
Right. Let's talk a little bit about how he came out to Anaheim from Ontario. So he was a teacher in Ontario, and I know he had
Yes.
very good control of the students in Ontario.
Right.
And then he came
Mother came out from Canada and then taught at his school for a year, and then they fell in love, and so they were married. So Dad was drawn to Anaheim because he had dated Margaret Fleur, who Fleurs were living in Anaheim at the time. And so they were looking for a superintendent to work with the Catholic Church, because the Ku Klux Klan was very prominent and was stirring a lot of trouble. And so Dad had to work with them, plus the Catholic Church, and he was able to stir the waters to be calm. And I understand. I don't remember. I remember, and then I also remember that the Spanish community was pushed off to one side because they were denied, I guess, the use of education because they couldn't speak English. But Dad created the La Palma School, or enhanced it in a way to make sure it was the same quality as all the other churches, other schools. But the children had the same chances to do everything we did. And before that, they sort of kept the Spanish community off to one side.
He served as superintendent during the segregation years, and then he was what do I want to say? He was very instrumental in desegregating the district.
Right.
Like when the laws were passed and the Hispanic kids were integrated into the regular mainline schools in Anaheim. Tell me a little bit about his involvement in the community in Anaheim. He was very involved on the Planning Commission, the Red Cross. He was a Rotarian. Can you talk a little bit about his involvement while he was superintendent of Anaheim?
Well, I just know that he was involved in anything that he was interested in. The conversation at the dinner table always included the family. We always heard what was going on as children growing up. And it seemed like my dad would be right there if they needed anything from the schools. And he was very supportive through the Rotary Club and people in the community.
Tell me a little bit about what he did for the district after the Long Beach earthquake in 1933.
Oh, you'll have to explain that again.
When the 1933 Long Beach earthquake happened, how did he handle that whole situation?
I remember that afternoon. It was like 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and it was on a Wednesday, and that was Dad's, that was school board meeting day. And I remember the earth shook, and we went out in our backyard, which had a long backyard, and I could actually see the waves of the earthquake going through the town. And my brother, who was 2 years older, was handicapped, and she picked him up and her dinner plate, and I remember going out and feeding him during that time. But he didn't come home until 9 o'clock at night, until he had gone to all the schools, surveyed all the damage that they could see. And it was right away, he planned to take care of, I know Broadway was damaged, and Lincoln, the older schools. I was in Horace Mann, and it did not sustain any damage where Fremont sort of collapsed. And so they were right away planning what they were going to do with the schools that night for the next day.
I understand they brought in buildings, kind of like tent barracks.
Yes, they brought tents in. And I was at JC for Fremont. But the earthquake, I think, was in 4th grade. So I still were not big they had to fight to get the bond issue to rebuild the schools. And so Fremont was intense because they didn't, the building had collapsed. And so when I went to seventh grade, it was intense. And finally we're building it, but he had to fight the increasing the tax bill for the community to rebuild the schools. And I don't know quite how he did it all, but I think the government finally relinquished funds to help too, of course.
That's so interesting. Now, tell me, you said you were in the first kindergarten class at Horace Mann?
At Horace Mann.
And that would have been the early 1930s?
Yes.
That's interesting. Can you recall those days, what it was like?
I remember that I think the first day that I remember about kindergarten, it was, I think they had a PTA meeting like September, October, and I remember having to stand up and introduce myself, and then I had to say, I'm Kathryn Louise Gauer, you know, that my dad was there as superintendent. I had not really realized how important he was until that day in Anaheim, when the high school, at Horace Mann, that I was a daughter of a superintendent, which meant you better be good.
You were being watched.
And then of course, as girls grow up, then there's always the phrase, oh, you think you're smart because you're the superintendent's daughter. So.
And you were.
And I had to be good.
Yes. Now, after the earthquake happened, then there was a flood.
Yes, we had flood.
As well.
And I remember that, and the effect of having to the water coming through from the Santa Ana River, and it was creeping up, and we lifted all the stuff out of that was below this level to be on top of the bunk beds and that sort of thing, and the water crept up to the steps at the back door, just about ready to come in, when finally the water broke through the railroad tracks off of Lincoln and got through to go down to the ocean. But Anaheim was flooded because the raised track on both sides of Anaheim with the train coming in. I think that's correct, but I'm sure.
Talking about your father's career, one little fact that you shared with the kids when we had our 50th anniversary at Mel Gauer School, you had talked about how Walt Disney came down and was making himself known in Anaheim during the 30s, and when the district was reopened and was Fremont Junior High kind of the meeting place of the district? Fremont Junior High.
Yeah, I was rebuilt complete because it had collapsed.
Right, and I remember you telling us that Walt Disney came down and showed the movie Bambi in the auditorium.
Oh yes, no, Disney.
Mm-hmm. And did he serve on the planning commission with your father in Anaheim?
Yes, he was on the planning commission at that point. And so Disney came to him because through the schools they could show the Disney film, which meant that they could get the door and their foot in the door to have the schools behind them. And so that helped Disney. So they brought Bambi down, which at the J.C. Fremont Auditorium to show us the first created movie by Disney.
Wow. And
that was to get their foot in the door in Anaheim for the property they wanted for Disney.
Interesting. Do you remember do you remember?
Oh, and I could tell you, then we had a free pass to Disneyland from then on.
Oh, that's nice.
That's right.
Now, I remember your parents were on the bridge on opening day. Wasn't that correct? Of the castle, didn't they get invited to Disney?
Oh yes, the opening of the. Oh yes, we were. Yeah. In fact, there was a picture in the paper of my mother taking the first step into the Magic Castle, the area of the castle at Disneyland, as they opened the gates.
Wow, that's wonderful. What a great memory.
When I had that free pass. We went until, I think, weren't you, Julia, on that or not? Children. Yeah, we still
Grandfather
had.
would always go to the front gate.
We had my pass was always one free.
Nice. That's really special. Talking about your father's career a little bit more, what do you think his vision for Anaheim City School District at the time was? What was his vision for the district?
Our dad, I would have to say that he thought that everybody was created equal, no matter what religion you were, whatever language you spoke in town. And so he stood up for the Spanish people that wanted their own school and maintained, yet he brought it up to standard too for all the school, Lowell Palma. But he listened, I think he listened to the families of the immigrants coming into Anaheim, because we had all these migrants that come float through, at the orange picking times. So I think that he had a feeling for the uncertainty for families coming into town, and try to get them to realize that Anaheim was a safe place to be. And he was always interested in everything going on, and was a big supporter of anything in the community that included everyone. Everyone. No nationality involved at all.
I remember in the interview that was conducted, in the interview that we have, he talked about, you're an American, you're in Anaheim and you're an American.
Yes.
So we need to all
Yeah.
exist together peacefully.
Always. And I know the Spanish at La Palma School wanted the children to be able to speak Spanish in school, and that was all right with my dad, but also they had to learn English too. But they were bilingual.
That's really interesting because we have dual language immersion now.
Yes.
And the children are being taught both languages.
Right.
So that legacy is still
Carried on.
carried on, yes.
When he was superintendent, and what she felt her father's greatest contribution to the district and to the community.
When your father, Mel Gauer, was the superintendent of the district, what do you think his greatest contribution was to the district?
I would say the music and the physical education. Every child had a chance to do both. Everybody should be exposed to everything in the community. So like our field day, even though you had handicapped children, they were able to do certain things educationally, physically. Everybody was participated. That was the big show of the year, was the May Day, when every school had gymnastics with the boys and maypole with the girls, and we all got to do, it was a wonderful day because everybody was participating. Every school, every child marched across the field in rhythm and to the music. And he saw that every school had a music in their school, and thought that was very important for every school to be musically educated. That they did have instruments where kids could learn to try out instruments, not particularly all of them, but he felt everybody should have a chance to do anything they wanted to do that was provided.
That's wonderful because for a while there, music was very prevalent in Anaheim City School District back then. That was what it was called. And then it went away with Prop 13, and now it's back in
Right.
full force. And we have a music teacher at every one of our school
Oh, that's
campuses.
wonderful.
And the younger children, K through third grade, are able to learn general music education and play recorders.
Right.
And the upper grade, 4 through 6, are able to try out the instruments,
Yep.
like you're saying.
Well, Dad said that everybody should be able to sing, and he sang his song, and nothing could be finer than to be an Anaheimer in the morning. And he always sang with the PTAs, and music was always included. And everybody had a chance to try out an instrument, in the junior high level.
That's great. That's wonderful.
As superintendent, how else did he serve in the community? What other organizations?
As superintendent of the district, how else did he serve in the community?
Oh, he was very prominent as Rotarian, so he was that part of that club, and was representative for the to the National Convention with Rotary Club. He was, what was the other one that had, the Elks Club, I guess, yes. He was in.
I understand he was very active with Red Cross as well.
Yeah, oh, yes, and my mother was head of the Red Cross during the World War II, World War I, no, World War II for the women, and yes, he was very, very much involved in all the community activities that involved the community.
I think when we read the interview, he realized how much Red Cross does when there are disasters like the earthquake
Yes,
and like
yes.
the flood. And he also talked about the YMCA also.
Oh, yes, yes. That was another one he was favorite. He actually was a counselor a couple times going up to the boys at Osceola. Osceola, isn't it? Up in the hills and above Redlands. And yes, he thought that was important. Every child should be able to climb the mountain.
He was involved with Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts,
Yes,
I understand also.
yes, supported both.
When did he serve actually as superintendent, and what did he do in his retirement?
Okay. I wanted to also ask, what were the years that he served as superintendent? What year did he start as superintendent?
I don't remember what year. You'd have to tell me.
Okay, I believe it was, well, the interview, I think it was July 1st, 1925 was when.
See, I wasn't born until 1926.
Oh,
See, I was born in November, and I think he just come that year. And so I think they moved in during the summer, and I think I was born in November.
okay, and then when did he end his term as superintendent, and then he became the business superintendent? Was that in the 1940s?
You know, I don't know because I was away, married and up in Northern California. So I really don't remember those, really what was going on. Because once I was married in 1947, then I lived up in Berkeley because my husband went to UC Berkeley and finished after I finished at UCLA. Then we were married up there and stayed up there for a while afterwards.
And
So I was out of commission, with communicating with Anaheim, except on our trips down the
but
hill.
he did serve as business superintendent of the district?
Yes, I think he was still superintendent at that time.
And then he retired in what year? Do you know what year he
I
retired?
don't remember, no.
Okay, sometime in the, well, I believe that the school was dedicated in 1957 in September.
So it was before that, wasn't it?
Right around that
Yeah,
time.
I think
I
so.
think he served as business.
Year before, 2 years before.
Okay.
Because I think he was planning the school, but I think he did retire.
And how did they decide? Did they come to him and ask him, or just let
I
him
have
know
that
their
one I
intentions
couldn't answer.
about the school? Okay.
No,
the
because
school.
I would be away at that time and I would not be a part of it.
Okay. So I believe 1957 is the 50th. That, I mean, is the.
Yeah, I was married in 1957,
Okay.
47. What was I married?
Oh, you were.
47, yeah.
We have a picture of the dedication day, and I
Yes.
believe you and your mom and
I
Charlotte
was
are
there.
sitting there. Okay.
Yes, and it was a very special day. Charlotte and I both were able to come.
How did your dad feel that day? What was his?
He was grateful, and I think as he sang the song, "Nothing could be finer than to be an Anaheimer." That was his philosophy, and I think he was very proud of it. And he loved the school being named after him, and he spoke to all the children, and he could not pass a child up without making some kind of comment. And that's where I met you.
Absolutely. At the 50th anniversary. That was a wonderful
Right.
event. And we were privileged to have the first principal there as well.
Yeah.
Richard Morgan. That was.
Yeah, he was a very, very, very proud man. And I think he felt that he was appreciated. And he knows that he was always happy when he got a letter or something like that was sent to him to remind him of things that he had helped him do. And my mother, bless her heart, I think carried the family really well, because I was thinking about her yesterday, and she had a philosophy, and I think it's certainly using it now in my life. If you have nothing to say that's good, keep your mouth shut. And she said, either speak, with the assurance and respect, or else we just do not discuss any difficulty outside the family. So, to always be complimentary. And I know that she was particularly wonderful when the boys would come to the door to sell subscriptions. She wouldn't just say sorry and shut the door. She said, no, what are you planning to do with your life? And that was his attitude. If someone asked him for something he needed to help, he said, what's your plans with that? Were you going to go to college? Or, so they were always interested in the child, in their growth and expansion.
I wanted to say one thing. Some water. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
And his retirement, what did he do after?
He had a really good retirement. He retired from Anaheim. They honored him with letters. It was a big ceremony. We were all there.
What did he do?
Do you want anything about World War II? Anything during that time or not?
Sure.
Okay. When your father retired from Anaheim City School District at the time, how did he live in his retirement? What kinds of activities did he participate in, or?
Well, see, this is when I was living up in Northern California, so I wasn't part of their daily routine, but he loved to travel. And I remember he going to the superintendent's convention, riding on the train and that sort of thing. But he always saw to it that we were always in the car going someplace and be educated. And so my mother and he continued to do as much traveling as they could in the United States. They did go to the Rotary convention in Paris, I think it was. And that was the only time he left the United States. It was through the Rotary. But they drove back and forth. Margaret, my older sister, was living in Washington, D.C. then. And so they would drive back to see her every year, of course. And she would come out too in California. So he loved to be able to travel. But of course, they couldn't afford to do all of that. They did have a trailer that they bought, so they could pull the trailer with a group of friends in the trailer group. And that was what he loved to do.
That reminded me, he also, within the district, he also was involved with the religious release program. Were you familiar with his involvement with that?
Now, I wouldn't know really about that, because that would be daily life, and I'd just be there,
You were probably up north.
probably being up north. I didn't know all that was going on.
Now, during World War II, in the district, in the interview, he talked a lot about just the times and what it was like in the district. And I was thinking about this, how different it is now in the district, but to have a war going on, and how they had wardens walking the streets, and you had to pull your blinds, and
Oh,
he
yes.
talked about rationing
Blackout.
and the certificates and everything,
Yes.
and how he couldn't afford gasoline to go up to see his mom in Pomona. So he got a bicycle and rode to his job.
That's right, because of the gasoline shortage.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and also the shoes. I remember thinking I wanted more shoes or something, and my dad took my shoe ticket because he needed a new pair of shoes. But that was something about the war that I remember. But he wanted to be a part of the community. And he never said no to anybody that asked him to do something. And if he had problems with the community, since we always discussed everything at the dinner table, it was always my mother that kept him calmed down, because he had very definite ideas of how things should be run, and he could discuss it with the family too.
Retirement day, Julia mentioned that.
Okay.
From the Anaheim City Planning Commission.
When he retired from the Anaheim City Planning Commission, your daughter mentioned there was a big event when he was retiring from the Planning Commission in the city of Anaheim. Do you recall that event at all?
I remember that day having the luncheon. It was all the people that he'd worked with came to honor him, and it was interesting to know that they knew the best side of him, and having sat at the dinner table, I knew what the other side was sometimes, but he always maintained his strength to strengthen the whatever group he was with, always with a positive attitude.
He seemed to be very well liked by everyone he worked with and very ethical.
Yes, they didn't, he never presented any animosity in public, always very positive. He always had a cheerful smile, and he always felt that every meeting he went to should be started with music, and that was very much part of his life. Too, I've forgotten that played the banjo, mandolin, rather, and he sang a lot.
What was it like to have Mel Gauer as a dad?
When he loved to fish.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
No, that's okay. What was it like to have Mel Gauer as a dad?
I took it as an honor, for one thing. I know I got tired of hearing all the girls say, "You think you're so smart because you're the superintendent's daughter." I was not treated any differently than any other child. I knew that. He was not a harsh father, nor was he a harsh superintendent. He always felt there was reasons for anything that happened, and he always listened, I felt, to what was going on. And I don't remember him disciplining me particularly. Mother took care of that. But she would say, don't disturb your dad. He's got enough on his hands. So she would take care of the family discipline. So he was always supportive of everything I did. I think he was very proud of his daughters as we came along. I never felt that he was disappointed at all, and he liked the fact that I could play the piano, and he loved to sing. So it was a very cheerful attitude in the home, I think.
Sounds like a very happy home.
A happy family.
Is there anything that we didn't ask her that she feels is significant to share?
Is there anything today that we have forgotten to ask you that might be really important in remembering your dad and remembering his legacy?
Well, it's just, I think his song that couldn't be than being a Anaheimer in the morning, and he loved people, and he loved teaching at the Bible class at church. And he loved being with people. That was the main thing. I think that I know in the mountains, because of my brother having had whatever it was that kept him from being fully developed, we had a cabin up in the mountains. He took us up in June. We stayed in the cabin all summer long for 3 months until we came back down. He thought it was important that we should be away from town. We have a place. In fact, I felt I was denied the fact that kids could go to the beach. Of course, I was in a mountain cabin and had a rowboat I could get out in. But he wanted to be away the community. When he came up on the Friday night until Monday morning, he'd be away from the area, but he was still very much involved and felt responsible to be in town and available. But because of mother having the problem with my brother that was disabled, it was easier for her to be away from town, but very difficult because you didn't have a washing machine. You had to climb the mountain. I had to go down and get the mail every day and get milk. But he felt the family was protected because of Sonny, his son, that was handicapped. And it was, in fact, people didn't even know he existed because he was kept at home. And when he died, everybody didn't realize that the son was there. But I don't know why, and particularly, well, he loved to fish, I guess. But it was very difficult for my mother to spend the summers in the mountains, but it was beautiful. So we were very protected as a family.
Overall, when I was reading the biography or the interview, your father had such a strong work ethic, even from a very young age. He sold things. He built ships, I believe, in the war, and just his early days seemed to give way to his very strong career in Anaheim of always being involved and always being around people.
Oh, yes.
It was so prevalent in the beginning of the interview how he sold all kinds of things and tried out everything.
Yes, I think so, yeah, it really. He was always interested in everything new and very interested in new people. And he never, I think that's because of my mother too. She was the kind that could not see people sitting there, and if she's waiting for something, she would always start a conversation. You know, where are you from or what are you for and that sort of thing. And my dad was the same sort of person, that he never knew a stranger, let's put it that way. You know, always ready to chat with somebody and listen.
He had so many interesting experiences as a young boy also. When his grandparents were in Chicago, he got to go to the World's Fair there, and I was reading in the interview, and he just talked of those experiences, so it makes sense that he would be very people-oriented and be very curious.
I'm not sure what you're saying.
Oh, I'm sorry. When he was a young boy, he had so many interesting experiences. I think he mentioned his grandparents lived in Chicago.
Yes.
And so he got to travel at an early age,
Yeah.
and it just gave way to a very interesting life and career.
And then they moved to Kansas, and then then his parents came to California. I know there's a picture of my grandfather, his father, 1913, being in Long Beach. So I think they came that year, and he had pneumonia or something like that, and I have a picture of him in the wheelchair or something like that. And I think he died shortly after that, but
What year was your father born?
I couldn't tell you. At this point, I don't think I really don't remember. I know he died at 92, didn't he, Julia?
Yeah, just before
My daughter.
93, so.
Yeah, so
And that was
I
after
don't
you-
have that in my memory bank.
Did? I know, I feel like,
I think you died
I know, I'm so curious to know when he was born. I need to Google it.
I have to look it up.
in 87. Subtract 92.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah, I was
93.
Oh, okay. So yeah, right at the end of the 1800s. Yeah, right around the time my grandparents were born in 1900.
Well, my mother was born, I think, in 1885, so she was 10 years older, so he must have been born before 1900.
1895, possibly.
But I'm not sure. But she was 10 years older, so.
What year did he die?
I believe it was right after you moved to Fallbrook. You moved to Fallbrook in the house in 86, and he died right after the holidays, early 87.
His birthday was on Washington's birthday.
But I think he died right after Christmas, early January, right after you moved to
Yes,
Fallbrook.
yes, that
So
was,
you moved
exactly, it was
86,
82,
So he would have died,
in 82,
no, not the
No.
little house, the big house. Not
in
the-
Fallbrook,
Yeah, the Alta Vista house.
yeah. Wasn't that 82?
No, that's when you guys built the little cottage
Oh,
for
okay,
Aunt Del, the
okay.
house that was gonna be, the
Okay.
original house on El Nido. When you built the Alta Vista house, you moved in the fall of 86.
Okay.
Grandpa died within months after that.
Yeah,
before
right.
he turned
He
93.
died
He would have died.
on almost on Mother's birthday, December 2nd or something like that,
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
right after Thanksgiving.
And I was hired in 1990, and that's what I was saying. I just
Okay.
missed meeting him.
Okay.
Because I came in December of 1990. I interviewed for an intercession
Yeah.
job, and then I signed my contract.
Whatever I told you then was probably correct. What I'm telling you now, probably.
Oh no, that's okay. No, you're fine. You're fine.
All right,
Are we good?
I think we're good.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Well, thank
so
you.
much. This was really, really interesting.
I'm glad I could contribute to the history of Anaheim.
Awesome. Yes.
Yeah, it was a wonderful time, and I think that growing up in a small town like that and having a parent that was interested in the community, I saw a lot of things that normal people don't have a chance to do. So I was very, very privileged, and I remember thinking not long ago, I could walk home from the theater at 9 o'clock at night and be safe. I could walk to church, youth groups, and 10 blocks away. My mother never felt threatened, or we would be never threatened by predators of any kind, and couldn't have asked for a better community to live in. Actually, it was very church-oriented, very helpful people, always friendly, and my neighborhood was totally involved in the community. The SQR store lady, Mrs. Snyder, she was her husband was part of the SQR store. His secretary was Redder, so the SQR Redder. So we were all tied in with all the established people in Anaheim that made Anaheim great.
I understand you also either were acquainted with the Cattell or the Glassell daughters, Kate and Ella.
Yes.
Did you know them, or?
Well, I just knew them.
Mhm. That's kind of a little bit of
Oh,
interesting history.
We knew everybody, but I always didn't know everybody what they were all doing. But no, we were always. That was part of the problem of growing up. Is got to be good because it reflects on your father, your mother. You have to be really good. You do not do this. You do not do that. You're always aware that you were being watched, and you had to be a good example.
Describe a typical Saturday night for a high schooler in Anaheim when she was growing up.
What was a typical Saturday night like when you were growing up as a high school student in Anaheim?
Well, Friday night was the night was the high school dances. You could walk to the high school, and everybody came, and we could dance and that sort of thing with all the community. And we did a lot of the YMCA. I was a girl reserves. Dad was in the YMCA board. He was a counselor at the camp a couple of summers. And so we were always involved in the church groups in the community. And we were, as I said, we were admonished, you are the superintendent's daughter. You better be good, because all that noise comes right back home. And we were very good, too.
I believe that.
What's transportation like?
What was transportation like back then?
I rode a bicycle, walked, and you did that in town. And you had a car, but the car was used by father to go to work. If you were anything going on in town, you could walk. We walked. We did the shopping by walking to town, and the grocery store was just a block away. And I would run down to get the loaf of bread or whatever is needed, you walked. And I worked at the SQR store in high school in Cressus one summer, one Christmas, I think. Yes, and everybody walked or rode a bike. My dad even rode a bike during the war because saved gasoline, going to save it for us on the weekends to go to Pomona to see his mother, because we had to be rationed. So he had a certain amount for school, but if he had extra things to do, he rode a bike during that time on a Saturday afternoon, let's say. But not, and I did see him ride around the school once or twice and show off that he could do it.
He mentioned being in charge of the rationing for a large area during World War II. You know, like controlling like a lot of the families in that region. He mentioned that in the interview. Do you remember him kind of being stressed out about that, of being
I don't remember now. I don't.
during World War II? Yeah, he spoke of being overwhelmed by being in charge of the rationing.
Oh, rationing?
Yeah, in like a region from Anaheim to Los Alamitos even. When you read the interview, it's real interesting how he was. Had to get census reports to figure out how many, you know, who were the people that he needed to control the rationing for, like how would their coupons, you know,
I'm not really sure what you're.
I know, I'm like I'm just rambling on about just the World War II era was so fascinating in this interview.
World War II?
Yeah, World War II, when he was serving as superintendent
Yeah.
during that time, and when you talk about the rationing.
Yeah, he had to ride a bike.
Yes, and just how, yeah, it was just, it's so fascinating to me to think that he served during the time of the war.
Well, if you wanted to go to all the schools, he only had so much gallons of gas. And if we were going to go to Pomona on Sunday to see his mother, which we had to do because she was alone and not always having somebody to live with her, and we had to sometimes had to take food to her. So that was always a problem, and we had to save gas. That's why I think he took us to the mountains, so we'd be out of the way and wouldn't have to be using the car, you know, that sort of thing. He had to, during the war, we were up in the mountains part of the time. And I did the walking up and down the hill to get gas. He'd come up on the weekends. We'd do our major shopping. And then he'd be down in Anaheim while we were up in the mountains. And my sister and I would walk down and get milk every day, or a mile away because we only had an ice box. So we were aware of what was going on during the war. And we were all involved in it.
We're good.
All right.
They're going to take all this and edit everything.
Pardon?
So they're going to take all of the interview and edit it.
Okay.
So it's going to be really good.
Okay.
I'm anticipating great things.
Well, hope your questions were all answered.
Wonderful.
That
Thank
was
you.
really
Thank you so much.
Probably don't get anything
Thank
more.
you.